Center. The hospital was a relic of the 1950s, its brick facade weathered and cracked, with ivy creeping up the sides like skeletal fingers. I had been working the night shift as a security guard for about 3 months now, and while the job was mostly uneventful, there was something about the building that always made my skin crawl. Maybe it was the way the fluorescent lights flickered in the empty hallways, or the faint whispers that seemed to echo when no one was around. But tonight, something felt different. I grabbed my flashlight and clipboard, locked my car, and made my way to the employee entrance. The automatic doors hissed open, and I was greeted by the sterile smell of antiseptic and the faint hum of the HVAC system. The lobby was deserted, as usual, except for Linda, the night receptionist, who gave me a tired smile as I signed in. "Quiet night so far," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But you know how it is. Things can change in an instant." I nodded, trying to shake off the unease that had settled in my chest. Linda was right. Things could change in an instant, and tonight, they would. The first sign. My first round of the night was routine. I checked the emergency exits, made sure the storage rooms were locked, and scanned the hallways for anything out of the ordinary. The hospital was eerily quiet, save for the occasional beep of a heart monitor or the distant murmur of a nurse's voice. As I approached the east wing, however, I noticed something strange. The door to the old pediatric ward was slightly ajar. I frowned. That door was always locked. The ward had been closed for years after a fire claimed the lives of several children and a nurse. The hospital had sealed it off, and no one was allowed inside. I pulled out my keys and checked the lock. It was intact, but the door had definitely been opened. I pushed it open slowly, the hinges creaking in protest. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing a scene frozen in time. The walls were scorched, the paint peeling like burnt skin. Toys lay scattered on the floor, their plastic faces melted and twisted. The air was thick with the smell of smoke and something else, something metallic, like blood. I took a step inside, my boots crunching on broken glass. The silence was deafening, but as I moved deeper into the ward, I began to hear something. A faint, rhythmic sound, like the ticking of a clock. I followed it, my heart pounding in my chest, until I reached the nurse's station. There, sitting on the counter, was an old wind-up toy, a clown with a cracked face and a sinister grin. Its head turned slowly toward me, and its glassy eyes seemed to lock onto mine. The ticking grew louder, faster, until it was almost deafening. And then, with a sudden, jarring movement, the clown's mouth opened, and a high-pitched laugh echoed through the ward. I stumbled backward, nearly dropping my flashlight. The laughter continued, growing louder and more distorted, until it sounded less like a laugh and more like a scream. I turned and ran, slamming the door shut behind me. I leaned against it, breathing heavily, and fumbled for my radio. "Linda, do you copy?" I said, my voice trembling. "There's something in the pediatric ward. I need backup." Static crackled in response. Then a voice came through, but it wasn't Linda's. It was a child's voice, soft and sing-song. "Come play with us." The second sign. I dropped the radio as if it had burned me. The voice was gone, replaced by the usual static, but the damage was done. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of what had just happened. Was I hearing things? Was this some kind of prank? I didn't have time to think about it. I needed to get out of there. I hurried back to the lobby where Linda was still sitting at her desk. She looked up as I approached, her expression one of concern. "Are you okay?" she asked. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I opened my mouth to tell her what had happened, but the words caught in my throat. How could I explain something I didn't even understand? Instead, I just shook my head. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just thought I heard something. Probably nothing." Linda gave me a skeptical look but didn't press further. I decided to take a break and headed to the break room to collect my thoughts. As I sat there, sipping a cup of coffee that did little to calm my nerves, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The break room had a large window that overlooked the parking lot. I glanced outside, half expecting to see someone, or something, staring back at me. But the lot was empty, the only movement coming from the swaying branches of the trees in the wind. And then I saw it, a figure standing at the edge of the lot, just beyond the reach of the street lights. It was tall and thin, its limbs unnaturally long, and its head tilted at an odd angle. I couldn't make out its face, but I could feel its gaze on me, cold and unrelenting. I blinked, and it was gone. The third sign. The rest of my shift passed in a blur. I tried to focus on my rounds, but my mind kept drifting back to the clown, the voice on the radio, and the figure in the parking lot. By the time 6 a.m. rolled around, I was exhausted, both physically and mentally. As I was preparing to leave, Linda stopped me at the door. "Be careful out there," she said, her tone unusually serious. "They say the hospital is built on cursed ground. Bad things happen here, especially at night." I wanted to laugh it off, to tell her that I didn't believe in curses or ghosts. But after what I had experienced, I wasn't so sure anymore. I stepped outside, the cool morning air a welcome relief. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a pale light over the parking lot. I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the lingering sense of dread. And then I saw it. Scratched into the hood of my car were 3 words, written in jagged, uneven letters. The fourth sign. I stared at the words, scratched into the hood of my car, my heart pounding in my chest. The letters were jagged, as if carved by something with sharp, uneven claws. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. Was this some kind of sick joke? Had someone followed me out here? I glanced around the parking lot, but it was empty. The only sound was the faint rustling of leaves in the wind. I pulled out my phone and snapped a picture of the message, my hands trembling. I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't report this to the police. They'd think I was crazy. And I couldn't tell Linda or anyone else at the hospital. They'd either laugh it off or tell me to quit. But I couldn't quit. I needed this job. I got into my car and drove home, the words burning in my mind. "We're watching you." Who was watching me? And why? The next night, I tried to put the events of the previous night out of my mind as I prepared for my next shift. I told myself it was just a prank, that someone was messing with me. But deep down, I knew better. Something was wrong, terribly wrong, and I couldn't ignore it. When I arrived at the hospital, Linda was at her desk as usual. She gave me a nod as I signed in, but there was something different about her tonight. She seemed nervous. Her eyes kept darting toward the hallway, as if she expected something to come creeping out of the shadows. "Everything okay, Linda?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She hesitated, then forced a smile. "Yeah, just long night, you know?" I didn't press her, but I could tell she was hiding something. I made a mental note to keep an eye on her as I started my rounds. The basement. The first few hours of my shift were uneventful. I checked the doors, walked the hallways, and tried to convince myself that everything was normal. But as I approached the basement door, I felt that familiar sense of dread creeping back in. The basement was off-limits to everyone except maintenance staff. It was a dark, damp place filled with old equipment and forgotten supplies. I had never been down there, and I had no intention of going now. But as I turned to walk away, I heard it. A faint, rhythmic knocking coming from behind the door. I froze, my hand hovering over the doorknob. The knocking continued, slow and deliberate, like someone was trying to get my attention. I knew I should walk away, but something compelled me to open the door. The stairs leading down to the basement were steep and narrow, the walls lined with peeling paint and exposed pipes. My flashlight beam barely cut through the darkness as I descended, each step creaking under my weight. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and something else, something metallic. At the bottom of the stairs, I found myself in a long, narrow hallway. The knocking had stopped, replaced by an eerie silence. I swept my flashlight beam across the walls, revealing rows of old storage lockers and broken equipment. And then I saw it. At the far end of the hallway, a figure stood motionless, its back to me. It was tall and thin, its limbs unnaturally long, just like the figure I had seen in the parking lot. My breath caught in my throat as I took a step closer, my flashlight trembling in my hand. "Hello?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. The figure didn't respond. It just stood there, perfectly still. I took another step, and then another, until I was close enough to reach out and touch it. And then, with a sudden jerking movement, it turned to face me. I stumbled backward, my flashlight falling from my hand and rolling across the floor. The figure's face was a twisted, grotesque mask of pain and anger, its eyes hollow and black. It opened its mouth, revealing rows of jagged, broken teeth, and let out a blood-curdling scream. I turned and ran, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't stop until I reached the lobby, where Linda was waiting for me, her face pale and drawn. "What happened?" she asked, her voice trembling. I couldn't speak. I just shook my head and collapsed into a chair, my hands still shaking. The truth. Linda sat down beside me and placed a hand on my shoulder. "You saw it, didn't you?" she said quietly. I looked at her, my eyes wide with fear. "Saw what?" She hesitated, then sighed. "The hospital. It's haunted. Everyone who works here knows it, but no one talks about it. Bad things happen here, especially at night. People hear voices, see things, some even disappear." I stared at her, my mind reeling. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want to scare you," she said. "But now that you've seen it, you need to know the truth. The hospital was built on cursed ground. Decades ago, this land was used for something terrible, and the spirits of those who died here, they're still here. They're angry, and they're looking for revenge." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What do I do?" Linda looked at me, her eyes filled with pity. "You leave. You quit this job and never come back, because if you stay, they'll never let you go." The final night, I didn't listen to Linda. I couldn't. I needed this job, and I wasn't going to let some ghost story scare me away. But as I started my next shift, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, waiting for me. The night started like any other. I did my rounds, checked the doors, and tried to ignore the creeping sense of dread. But as I approached the pediatric ward, I heard it again. The faint, rhythmic ticking of the wind-up clown. I pushed the door open, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The clown was still sitting on the counter, its cracked face turned toward me. But this time, it wasn't alone. The room was filled with children, dozens of them, their faces pale and lifeless, their eyes hollow and black. They stood motionless, staring at me with expressions of pure hatred. And then, as one, they began to move. I turned and ran, but the door slammed shut behind me. I was trapped. The children closed in around me, their cold hands reaching out to grab me. I screamed, but no one could hear me. No one could save me. And then, everything went black. Epilogue. When I woke up, I was in the hospital bed, hooked up to machines. Linda was sitting beside me, her face pale and drawn. "What happened?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Linda hesitated, then sighed. "We found you in the pediatric ward, unconscious. You've been out for 3 days." I felt a chill run down my spine. "The children. They were there. They tried to..." Linda cut me off, her voice firm. "There were no children. The ward has been empty for years. I wanted to argue, to tell her what I had seen, but I knew it was no use. No one would believe me. No one ever does. I quit my job that day and never went back. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear the ticking of the wind-up clown. And I know they're still watching me.